What's up, Leafs fans? Welcome to Leafs Digest. We're back after another preseason game breakdown. Tonight, breaking down a 5-2 loss to the Montreal Canadiens, second game of the preseason. Regardless of the outcome, absolutely love seeing NHL hockey back. Tonight, the Leafs faced off against the HABS in Montreal, and obviously, as I said, dropped this one 5-2. Fifth goal, an empty netter. Shout out Michael Pezzetta. Great game by him. 2 goals for him. I don't know if he'll be making the Habs roster this year, but he'll definitely be pushing for a spot to crack that lineup at some point, whether he gets in because of injuries, suspensions, whatever it is. Shout out to him. But going to the Leaf side of the things here, goals scored by David Kampf and Ondrej Kase. I want to get right into this with these two guys because first thing, David Kampf, his goal that he scored tonight, this is exactly the kind of thing that we were expecting from him. Not necessarily the goal that was scored. We know he's not necessarily a goal scorer, a guy who's going to produce a lot this season, but more so the start of the play in general. He came in here as a guy who was touted as a true centerman who takes lots of faceoffs and is incredible defensively. Now, what did we see come from his goal tonight? A defensive zone face-off win on the penalty kill that leads to him going down the other end, creating pressure, causing the goalie to turn the puck over, make a bad play, and Kampf puts the puck in the back of the net. Now, this goal was pretty similar to the Curtis Gabriel goal we saw the other night. Not the prettiest of goals, not the kind of goals that are going to end up on highlights, more so probably going to end up on bloopers. So 2 back-to-back goals here from Habs goaltenders that are going to end up on blooper reels for Leafs players capitalizing on, but both good opportunities for these guys to show, hey, we can at least still put the puck in the net, put some pressure on these guys. So for a guy like David Kampf to have that opportunity tonight, to be able to transition that into a goal, you like what you see from there, because even as Leafs fans, I think we were pretty concerned that this is a guy who wasn't going to be able to score. Maybe we paid too much money for a guy who couldn't score goals. And even for him to have that type of opportunity, it's pretty nice to see. And again, it coming from a position of him winning a defensive zone draw on a penalty kill, transitioning into offense. Love to see that from a guy like that. The other guy who scored a goal here tonight for the Leafs, Ondrej Kase. This is a guy who scored 20 goals a couple years ago in Anaheim. He was one of those guys who's a little bit concerning of a signing, I guess to say, because he's had some injury problems at this point in his career. He's had some serious concussion issues, some things that have really held him back. He missed most of the season last year playing in Boston, and we weren't sure what his health was going to be. It was very dependent. His success and his ability to play in this team, make any kind of contribution, wasn't even necessarily due to his play or what he's going to be able to do. It's really solely based on his health here. Is he going to be a guy who's going to be able to be healthy and stay into this lineup? And obviously watching one preseason game and having him in 3 days of camp, 4 days of camp to this point, you can't really make that kind of strong determination. Yeah, he's going to be healthy. He's going to be 100% because only time will tell if this guy can hold up. But he played a pretty good game tonight. He looked pretty good. He was in the right positions. He was making strong plays. He was going to the right spots on the ice, which ultimately ended up to him scoring that goal. Now, the other person who led to him being the benefactor of that goal is a guy that we've been pretty hard on this show, and we've been debating what his future with the Toronto Maple Leafs would look like, and that's Morgan Rielly. Morgan Rielly, I gotta say, in my opinion here tonight, he didn't look great defensively, and that's honestly something as Leafs fans we've come to expect. We watch this guy out there and we're like, he's not the best defenseman. He's not the best defensive player on this Leafs team on the ice at any point in time. He doesn't play great defensively, which is unfortunate for a guy who is a defenseman. But that being said, he is a guy who throughout his career has made it known that he is an offensive defenseman. And I think in the past 2 years, he's kind of taken a step back. He's lost that ability to contribute and be dominant offensively, where we saw him a few years ago putting up career-high numbers, scoring a lot, getting lots of assists, being very potent on the power play, moving pucks around and being some kind of a threat. In the last 2 years, that really trailed off, especially last season when we talked about a guy like Rasmus Sandin taking over that position on power play number 1 from Morgan Rielly. Now tonight, again, it's all preseason and you can't say, oh, this is the way things are going to be moving forward, but we saw him on this power play, most importantly, not afraid to shoot the puck. This guy was launching the puck. He wasn't hitting the net all the time, which is a little disappointing, but he wasn't afraid to shoot it. He missed the net, got it back, shot it again. We saw that time after time on his power play opportunities, leading that first power play unit. His passes seemed to be pretty on. He seemed to be pretty offensively aware. And then the other part of this being he was very, very offensively active. We saw him on numerous occasions circling into the offensive zone of the Montreal Canadiens, putting pressure on them, going and retrieving pucks, pinching, creating a four-man offensive type of opportunity with Travis Dermott staying back. And I think that this is a good thing to see from Morgan Rielly, because we kind of saw him step back from playing that type of style of hockey in the past few years. And then the thing that I would say here is that for a guy like Morgan Rielly, who isn't as strong defensively, to see him step away from the offensive side of the game in the last couple of years and not be able to contribute offensively, it's one thing that we've really stepped in here and harped on, especially in the past few months of Josh and I starting this Leafs Digest channel, of what does Morgan Rielly bring if he's not creating any type of offensive chances? And for him to step up tonight and actually be very offensively involved is a very, very good sign for this Leafs team, because in a game like tonight, it's a preseason game, so it doesn't really matter. And when you have a guy like Travis Dermott, if you're going to play with him in the regular season, if Morgan Rielly is acting or playing the way he is, with Travis Dermott as his D partner, it's cause for concern, because it's lack of awareness of who he's on the ice with. But when your everyday D partner is a guy like TJ Brodie, who is defensively sound, that is much more of an opportunity for Morgan Rielly to take those chances, take those steps up into the play. And if he's going to carry this type of confidence into the regular season, playing with a partner like TJ Brodie, who is that defensively sound, I like what I see there. I'm very happy to see him continue that confidence, continue to try to create offense, continue to try to contribute, because he was doing it in much more creative ways than just trying to force passes around everywhere and just stay stationary. He moved his feet. He went east-west rather than just north-south, which is something we've seen a lot in these past two seasons. And I like that creativity and I like that confidence from him. A new guy on defense here, who I don't know if he'll necessarily get into this D spot in a regular rotation, but I think he could very likely push for a 7th D spot. And it's a guy I completely forgot about, and I feel like a lot of Leafs fans will have, is Menel. Menel looked very good tonight. I think that he was a guy who looked pretty calm, pretty poised. He was in good defensive positions. And when it came to the offense, he wasn't afraid to pinch. He wasn't afraid to step in. He wasn't afraid to try to keep that play alive, get some shots off, get good breakout passes. He didn't do anything that necessarily stood out, but it was a guy that when I saw him out on the ice, I thought, wow, okay, I forgot about that guy, and he can actually do something out there and contribute in some type of way. And as a 7th D option, I think that's a really good guy to have sitting in the stands, sitting in the ranks, waiting, because he could be a guy that could jump ahead of Timothy Liljegren if we think that Timothy Liljegren is maybe not ready to go here. Maybe he's still got that lack of NHL maturity. Whereas a guy like Menel, who's played pro hockey, played a little bit with Minnesota, ended up in the KHL this past season, coming over here, he's a guy from North America who knows the North American game. Yes, he played really well in the KHL, but we're looking at a bit of a different scenario than a guy like Mikko Lehkonen, who came here last year and didn't really perform that well because he wasn't used to the North American game. Menel, he's gonna be used to it. He's played here before. He knows what it's like. More so onto the defensive side, Carl Dahlstrom, did not like what I saw from him. I know he was a guy that we were kind of thinking, yeah, he could push to that 7 spot, maybe move Dermott out. He did not have a strong showing tonight. I think that if this is the type of play that he brings every single night, this is a guy who's just going to find himself in the Marlies on a consistent basis. I don't know that he can stick around if he continues to do that. I don't know if I liked Dahlstrom based on his play tonight. We'll see what he can bring in the next preseason games, what else comes of him in camp, more scrimmages, whatever. I just don't think that he had the strongest showing tonight. I'm not that happy with what I saw, and I think he's a guy that's going to get pushed down further into this depth chart. Another guy who is a new addition to this Leafs team, who I was pretty comfortable with tonight, he didn't do anything to blow me away, but it was Nick Ritchie. Nick Ritchie actually kind of surprised me. After watching Curtis Gabriel the other night, we saw a huge body out there who is out there to hit, fight, not really score goals, but just kind of be like a pest. And that was Curtis Gabriel. Curtis Gabriel, we really came away with a big takeaway of that guy can't skate. He's a guy who can't really keep up with the play. He knows his role, and he knows that he's not supposed to be the fastest guy out there. But I think generally just after watching that, going into tonight, seeing a guy like Nick Ritchie out there, I feel like a lot of people we're gonna have the same fear that I was just based on watching Gabriel the other night and having that kind of in the back of your mind, pushing this thought process that Nick Ritchie may be a slower guy. I didn't feel that way watching him out there tonight. He seemed pretty comfortable. He seemed to be able to keep up with the play. He's a good skater. He was making right decisions, good passes. He had good puck control. And then I liked him fighting Ben Sherratt. It's a preseason game, but like he's not going out there picking on some random guy trying to make the team. He went after Ben Sherratt and threw hands with this guy based on a hit from behind that wasn't thrown by Ben Sherratt, thrown by Jake Evans on Justin Hall in the corner. That being said, he still went after a big guy like Sherratt, wasn't afraid to stand in there on his own, throw some punches. You like that from a guy like that because he just brings some type of energy to this team. And if he can hold a role in that top six, it's a little bit of that intimidation factor that you don't get to see. You see guys like Gabriel or Wayne Simmons slide into the lower half of this roster, and they don't get as much playing time, so they don't get to scare guys that are going to play against Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, William Nylander that much. They're guys that are coming out after the fact to say, okay, you mess with that guy, don't do that again. I'm going to fight so-and-so on this team. Nick Ritchie's not that guy. He's going to be playing with the top six, roll out there and go after a big guy, a big name guy, and say, no more messing around with our big guys. I'm here to back them up. I'm here to support them when that case is. I did like Nick Ritchie sticking up for those guys tonight. I did like him fighting a guy like Ben Sherratt. I think that stands out. It stands out not just to Leafs fans, but it stands out to the coaching staff and the players on the team itself. Really shows them that he's got their backs. He's there to support them. Moving on to a player that I actually really think stood out to me in the past two games. He didn't get on the board with any goals or anything, but it's Semyon Dur-Argentintsev. I hope I'm getting that right. I'm just going to stick to the short form from this point on. You already know I've just said Semyon Dur-Argentintsev, so I'm going to roll with SDA from now on. SDA actually pretty much impressed me beyond what I kind of thought. I thought this was going to be a small guy, smaller than Nick Robertson, just based on photos and stuff I've seen of him, smaller than Mitch Marner, who's going to be out there really looking for a skilled game. And yes, he did stick to a skilled game. But that being said, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of any plays. I saw him going into the corners. I saw him taking checks. We saw him having very strong puck possession. He has good hands. He has good vision. He was making incredible passes on power plays to defensemen, keeping pucks in, throwing little drop passes, saucer passes. There was point in times where he was looking and firing guys passes cross ice backdoors on power plays. This is a guy who I really, really could see making his way into the Leafs lineup at some point with injuries and stuff. He's definitely not making this team out of camp. I really think he's going to start in the Marlies, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see him making his way onto this team at some point this season. Good for him. I like what I saw from there. He's a guy that this team drafted, developed. They've had him in the prospect system. He played for the Growlers. He's now playing with the Marlies. I really think this is a good thing for him. This is a good thing for the organization because it's good to see prospects develop into players that could make impacts at some point or step into roles that we need them to fill later on when guys go down with injuries or guys aren't performing to their best. He is a guy who looked pretty good, and I think he could fill in later in this season. The last two players that I kind of want to key on here, and one will tie into the others. You'll see what I'm going with this. Nikita Gusev, I kind of like what I saw from him. He wasn't outstanding by any means. No Leaf really was tonight in a 5-2 loss to the Habs. It was kind of a dull preseason game. That being said, Gusev did look pretty good. He didn't look out of place. He looked like a guy who could play in the NHL. Part of my problem with this is that I look at other Russians the Leafs have brought here. Mainly I go to Zaitsev, Ozhiganov, and a guy who's on the Leafs right now, Ilya Mikheyev, and I have a problem trusting these Russian guys who come here later in their careers, later in their pro hockey careers, and try to make it into the NHL. He did do pretty well in New Jersey, scoring 44 points in 66 games his first year here. He did okay in his second season with New Jersey, but then he had a falling out with the team. Production ended up not being there as he trailed off. Goes to Florida, did decent in Florida, 5 points in 11 games there. He's a guy who's going to come here and be a skilled guy looking to score goals, create points, but it really, really scares me after having seen these Russian guys come here and not fit in this Toronto system, and a guy like Ilya Mikheyev who kind of tailed off after his first season here. And then to my final point of the night of this game, Ilya Mikheyev, I know Josh and I have been so hard on this guy, but watching him out there, he's doing the right things. So it's hard to look at it and be like, this guy shouldn't be here, because he is an NHL player. He definitely is. I don't think, honestly, that he is a top 6 guy here in Toronto. I think that he's a guy who needs to embrace his role as a bottom 6 guy and as a supplemental scoring guy, a guy who scores here and there, not a guy who scores consistently. If he still thinks he's a guy who scores consistently after giving up and missing all these breakaway chances and all these chances in tight, I think he's got some kind of wrong mentality going on. I like the confidence out of him to think that, but to be dead certain after you still can't score goals, I think it's a hard thing to get through to this guy. Like, hey, maybe you're not that guy. Maybe he would be on another team if he plays 20 minutes a night. Maybe if he goes down to Arizona and ends up on their first line there, maybe he could score 20 goals. I don't know, but I don't think it's going to happen here in Toronto unless he can really turn things around. It hasn't seemed to show last season. It didn't really show this season so far in these 2 preseason games where he's missing all these breakaways and stuff. This is a guy who needs to get himself on the board to break that, get that monkey off of his back and really turn things around. If Ilya Mikheyev wants to stick around on this team, I think he needs to embrace the fact that he's a bottom 6 player. But overall, I don't think we need to take anything away from this as too concerning. Last game, we were pretty hyped up with a big win in our first preseason game back. We saw some good things from guys like William Nylander. We were really happy with them. There wasn't really anybody that stood out tonight. I was like, oh my God, this guy took so many steps forward. There was a few that I've mentioned along the way, mainly a guy like SDA that looked really good. Morgan Rielly changing his game to be more offensively involved tonight. And then I did like what I saw from Kampf, especially on that specific defensive play. It was good to see Kase score a goal. Those guys get into the mix. Nick Ritchie get in a fight. You kind of like that enthusiasm from those guys, but it's not overly impressive all around. This game wasn't anything to go ride home about. But Leafs fans, we've got more games coming up. This is a 5-2 breakdown, 5-2 loss to the Montreal Canadiens tonight. Breaking down that one. Next game, we'll see you guys after the game. Wednesday, September 29th at 7:30 p.m. versus the Ottawa Senators. Leafs fans, it's going to be a fun one. Stick with us here. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe to this channel. We'll see you guys in future videos. Keep believing.